This is the Waupaca School District Board of Education meeting.
Coming this evening, there are a few people in particular that we'd like to thank. One is just walking out for bringing the treats along, the pizza along. Thank you very much. With that, Dar, I'm going to ask you to start us off with the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Roll call. Let the record reflect that all members of the board are present with the exception of Mr. Polovitsky. I'll look for a motion on the agenda.
So moved.
Ron, did you have a...
Yeah, just one item under communications, E, the donation from Mr. Schultz to the CEC. We're going to pull that just because it shouldn't be on our agenda. We didn't realize, I thought that the donation went into the business office, but it's in the CEC checking account, so.
So moved with the change.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. With that, we'll move on to public comment. Is there anyone that wishes to address the board this evening? Oh, nothing back there? Okay. All right. We'll move on to approval of the minutes. We'll start with the January 14th regular board meeting. Is there a motion? Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And then the February 6th expulsion hearing, which was left at your place.
Sorry, did you, so moved for approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And I'll abstain, having not been at that meeting. Communications. Mr. Sari?
We had the School Bus Driver Appreciation Week this past month, or earlier this month, from February 10th to the 14th. The National FFA Week is this week, February 22nd to the 29th. And a reminder, on Thursday of this week is the FFA Breakfast. February is Career and Technical Education Month, and the National School Breakfast Week is coming up March 2nd through the 6th.
It's interesting that all of those proclamations, each was from a different body, like the state, the DPI, and it looks like the school district.
Mm-hmm.
Could you remind, what time does the breakfast start? I know
6:30.
6:30.
I think it's 6:30 to 7:30 if I'm correct.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct. It's tables are pretty open at 6:30 usually. Well, they are. All right, we'll move on to the district administrator's report, please.
Just a lot of committee meetings, a lot of them you're aware of. First, since we met last in January, we had the WASP conference, and then I also attended the AASA conference. Several administrators and staff participated in the Department of Justice Threat Assessment training that we had on Thursday, January 30th. Betty also was present for that. We had our first joint meeting with the CEC, the Board of Ed, and the core admin team on Monday, January 27th. And a reminder that coming up next week on Monday is the second joint meeting that we will have. We had our finance committee meeting on February 3rd, personnel on Wednesday the 5th, and instructional committee on Wednesday, February 19th, ending with a board retreat last week on Friday. I want to congratulate the student, staff, and community members and Mr. Fair for the Two Flags for Marco play this past week. It was a hit. I sat in on Mrs. Limkill's 4th grade class play last Thursday, which was tremendous as well. Aaron Jensen and I gave an update last week at the Chamber's Workforce Development Committee regarding where we're at with the Waupaca growth team work that we're doing. I have a county superintendent committee meeting tomorrow. We also meet with the Department of DHS Director Chuck Price on Monday. After a joint charter meeting, I'll be traveling for that meeting. And on Wednesday of next week, Steve Johnson and myself will be traveling to Appleton to participate in the Fox Valley Technical College board meeting. The presidents and soups in the area have been invited for that. That's all I have at this time.
And you also had attached the AASA convention.
Yeah.
Did you want to comment at all on that?
If you have an opportunity to go in there, please do, especially the part about board governance, the board superintendent relationship. I forget where it's listed in order, but you have my notes and then some documents in there, I believe, from Doug Eddy, who was the presenter. That was that 4-hour session that I was involved in. And I'd like to talk about that in a retreat format in more detail.
Ron, just in an overview, how many participants from across the country over there? I mean, can you give us
That's
an
a
idea?
good question. I would say, well, it had to be a couple thousand, I guess. At least.
Were there quite a few from the Wisconsin area that you knew of that were there?
Probably 25-ish from Wisconsin that I knew. There weren't very many from our region, but from other parts that I knew, yeah. It was Wisconsin always has a pretty good constituency at these.
Is it going to be in the same?
I was actually, I didn't know it, but I made the cut. I was videoed. And so if you go on there, you'll see me being interviewed impromptu, asking me questions.
After one of the sessions, or?
Well, it was at the end, and I was going to my last session on the last day, and this guy came, and so you'll see me with deer in the headlights on the video if you find it.
So is it held every
Definitely
year?
look for that.
Is it held every year in the same spot?
No, it rotates around. Next year, it's in New Orleans. I'm not gonna go next year. We just, last year it was in Nashville.
So it rotates every year?
And I don't know all the cities or everything. I've been to maybe 4 or 5 in 13 years. So every other year or so, we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Well, good for you.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I learned a lot, and I've been able to share with some of our staff, and as time rolls on, I'm going to share it with the core team and then the rest of the admin team too. You'll notice that the variety of topics, and some, like Laura and Mike, are interested in some things, I believe, and I think Mark has some interest in some of the pieces, and I think everybody, there's some stuff that we can all learn from.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to monitoring, we've got the budget update.
Thanks, Steve. I just want to make sure this works.
So what is food service? Food service is one of the largest restaurants in town, serving hundreds of patrons on a daily basis. So one could say, is it a business? Well, kind of. It has revenue limitations that are mandated by the Department of Public Instruction, which are based upon the free and reduced lunch demographics within your district. So although public school systems food service operations are, in theory, operated as a business, meal costs are governed based upon that free and reduced lunch children, meaning that a district can't simply increase or raise meal prices accordingly to offset any losses. In theory, or the method was to not have a gap between those who can afford and those who cannot. So it was set up to help everybody get basically the same types of meals. The challenges all school districts face with this business model, and this is an exercise, is this. So here's the district salaries and fringe. And then I pushed it out 5 years for an exercise. So if salaries and fringe go up 2%, and you move that forward, you can see the numbers increase. Food, regardless if you're taking donated commodities, diversion techniques, co-op purchasing, any way you do it, food prices still are going up. And they go up at about 3% each year. but the revenues go up about 0.005. So it's like the revenue cap. So it doesn't keep up, as you can see, if you just go forward doing the same old every year, the first year you're $21,000 short, 43, 66, 90, 114. That's what all districts are facing with the food service program. So why not simply refuse the federal dollars then? Some districts have. But here's why you can't. 50% of our revenues come from federal dollars. If you take a look at the big picture of our overall budget, the $26 million Fund 10 budget, the federal contribution to our budget is about 1%. This is the most highly regulated area in the federal government as far as food service, as far as school districts. So the food service department is a $1.1 million business operation. It's the only department in Wisconsin Public Schools that is managed supposedly as a separate entity. The revenues need to equate to the expenses. So there's moving pieces to this financial puzzle. 51% of our revenues come from the feds. We know we can't lose that. Districts have tried that. Superintendents have lost jobs when they've done that because you can't make up for that 50%. So you can't lose the 51% of the revenues.
Carl, could you just stop right there?
Sure.
Those that didn't receive that, how would they make that up, that 50?
That's exactly, they
Just-
could make it up. In
just-
theory, they thought
By just raising their prices?
they could
for
raise their
lunch?
prices, offer anything they wanted, but then the cost and what the population was willing to pay was astronomically different. So the two sides didn't meet. So that's why it didn't work out for them. The United States National School Lunch Program has universal standards, and they make sense. Yet, one might say that there ain't no such thing as free lunch. And that's what Pierre Doss, and I'm pronouncing that totally wrong, but I think it's, he said. So no matter the student population, most schools have multiple buildings to serve. Usually you don't just have all your students contained in one building. If you have them contained in one building, you can control salary and fringe, you control your costs much more easily. But there's elementary schools, you have a multitude of buildings, so that makes it even more difficult. The other part of the problem is student instructional schedules give a short time frame to serve hundreds of these children, 20 to 30 minutes. So you have to move these students through line fast, and that causes you to need more staff. It's not like a restaurant, you go in and sit down and they beep your beeper and say, well, 20 minutes is up, you got to leave. So that's the dilemma that food service has, because the time for the children is for instruction. So meaning less students doesn't necessarily mean less staff is needed because of those situations. Everyone has an opinion of how to run school lunch and breakfast program. 67% of all public and private schools in the state of Wisconsin are run internally rather than through private contractors. So over 50% of public schools struggle to break even annually, thus causing their general fund to supplement their losses through an operating transfer. Funds that come from your instruction account or your infrastructure areas of the budget. So boards of education are reluctant because to increase meal prices even by the minimal amount allowed annually by DPI because there's external political pressure. Nobody wants to raise prices. And it's understandable. Parents want more offerings, yet they don't want prices going up. So that's the dilemma everybody's in. That's the overall. Waupaca had it going on and still has it going on. Waupaca had a $93,000 food service fund balance to start the year in 2017 and 18, offering a financial safeguard from needing to take money from the general fund to balance its year-end food service department budget. We didn't have to do an operating transfer. Well, why do you need a fund balance in Fund 50? Well, you need funds available for major capital equipment breakdowns. Since you're running as a business, all your equipment within your food service, your dishwashers, your ovens, you have to replace somehow. So you need a fund balance for that. So you say, well, a dishwasher is $15,000. It's industrial. It has to be certain temperatures. An oven is $30,000. So that's why having a fund balance, rebuilding our fund balance in that area is crucially important. So rather than, we looked at, as other districts for years have tried to maintain this financial independence with ideas such as minimizing offering. I went to a seminar and people stood face to face, and then they were asked to view everything on that individual. And then they were asked to turn around, and the one person was asked to change 3 things on them. And then they did it again. And then they asked them to change 6 things on them. And everybody started taking things away. It was more of a, rather than adding things to them, it's kind of a habitual society. So we decided, when I get to it, that you can look at minimizing offerings, you can look at data on labor and food costs as the answer, yet continue to end up where these 50% of school districts are, because they're doing these things, but they're still facing this dilemma, because you saw in the first slide. So we asked, rather than continue down the same road traveled by other districts, why not find an alternative, consistent revenue stream to not only supplement the food service department, but to actually run a business model, increasing revenues while changing student culture. The Common Cafe was for socialization and diversification and getting students to come together. But it's more than meets the eye.
Welcome to the 2019 Pinnacle Award. Our first Pinnacle of Achievement Award winner created a coffee cafe to embrace differences and build diversity.
The idea for the Comet Cafe was to give students an in-house Starbucks type of cafe. Our overall goal is to reduce student absenteeism, create a positive impact on student achievement, fiscally improving the food service operations bottom line, truly treating students as young adults. The district also wanted to connect students to diverse groups of their own peers, broadening their cultural and social acceptance. The problem was changing the adult culture from fear of change, rules and regulations for students to follow, to one of trust in students and their ability to be responsible young adults. Many teachers were amazed at giving students additional latitude to make them actually more responsible. We earmarked only food service fund balance dollars of $50,000 for this renovation project. Soon the space was transformed. The first year it more than paid for itself in revenues, grossing over $230,000. The Comet Cafe is located in the high school commons lunch area, ideally right before going into the Performing Arts Center. Thus another fiscal benefit. It became so popular that we had to put in another entry and exit door. So a room that was seldom used became a hub, cutting-edge retail establishment, moving the school district of Waupaca into the future in the high school.
Congratulations to Carl Hayek, Director of Business Services, School District of Waupaca.
So old stereotypes habitually ingrained into American culture regarding school lunch programs are not the reality of today, yet they remain the perception nevertheless. Old stereotypes like this, you've seen them. That's not what we serve. Or a fish, I can't believe it, a fish on rye bread. Or look at this, that looks disgusting, quite frankly. We have cartoonists in the media portrayals of school lunch programs, and well, you can't even smoke on school grounds, but come and get it. With the lunch lady on the helm, and she's saying it's a chef's surprise. And this other lunch lady, she's basically, you better eat the salads, or you're gonna die. So those are the two concepts of this. So that's not our staff. That's not who we are. That's Chris Farley, for God's sake. And so if we look at this as we move forward, that I wanted to give you more of now a history of school lunch.
School lunch. Yeah, that's why it was not good. I don't like pickles. I don't think this is a full meal. I'll never eat this for lunch or whenever. Why not? 'Cause it tastes horrible. I think this is from the 1900s. Poor kids. I feel bad for them. If I only had 1 penny, I would rather starve. 1 out of 10, I'll give this a 1. I only give this a 1 because it's edible.
favorite lunch in 5th grade?
I see like some sort of green soup, rice, and bread. My grandma used to cook. It does taste like pea. Okay, not like that sort of pea. Pea the vegetable. I would pay maybe $10, $20 for this whole dish. This, even if it's 1910, would be like $20. I see meat, looks like steak, bread, and some sort of vegetable green stuff. The texture of the meat is like really dry. I have mixed emotions about it. I mean, I like meat that I can just slice across. Oh, there's my meat. But I like having goats. Like a seesaw. I'd give it a sad 2. Evil, like, tasteless. Not good. Can I have this first? The soup smells like steam. I feel like something that looks like vegetable soup. It's goopy and it looks like it has some carrots in it. It tastes odd but good at the same time. It tastes like goop. I don't know what that inside stuff is. It looks like whipped cream inside. This from 1930? I kind of feel bad for the kids there because there's a lot of raisins. Okay, big orange. At least I have an orange. What is this? Weird looking piece of meat. Ugh, it's mushy. Alright, I'm gonna try this meat. Whoa, it looks soggy. Oh my gosh, it's like falling apart. It feels like dog food. Is it dog food? Nope. I would call this a not so good meat thing. What is it? Liver! It's a cow's liver! Ew! I like other livers, but like, it's like not really right. I don't like the beef thing. I'd give it a 20. 20 out of 2. Wow. Is this meatloaf? I don't really like that. That's good. I guess it's just too many things together for me. Like the green beans, they just taste out of place, kinda. They're all the same color. For school lunch pudding, this is pretty good. I think this is school lunch when my grandma was born. If this was my school lunch in the 1950s, I'd be pretty good. Well, this is eggs and milk and it looks like orange juice. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. So salty, so eggy, so delicious. I give the eggs a 10. I would give this a 9. I have created an egg sandwich. I'd rate this a 100. Go make yourself some toast. It'll make your day happier. The chicken is covered in skin. I love chicken. Chicken is my favorite food. I just like how juicy it is inside and then crispy on the outside, which is what fried chicken is all about technically. I like the corn because it's buttery, and I also love the Jell-O because I like Jell-O. I just like it's so jiggly. I would definitely eat this for school lunch in the 70s because I like everything about it. This is a really good lunch.
The pizza is a square.
I love pizza. Pizza for life.
It's not bad. I love chicken nuggets. These are like frozen chicken nuggets. They're not like the worst thing in the world.
They had caprese then?
Caprese sun. That's their name. Tastes like fruit punch.
Do you know how much sugar's in that?
Not the healthiest meal. Yeah.
I'll rate this school lunch 6.5. There needs to be more chicken nuggets. This is my cake. It looks good. Oh, what's this? I see a McDonald's theme here. We have a Coke. We have their fries. We have a normal burger. We also got Taco Bell. So good. It's fantastic.
Oh, this is like so tasty. This is my heaven.
You could have mine. My parents would not let me buy this for school. I mean, one, it's a lot of bread. You can see all of these things on this plate are bread. Bread has a lot of carbs in it, and then they build up inside of you and you become bread. Apple, dairy milk, baked Lay's, let's go. I like the chicken a lot. I love celery so much. This is a healthy lunch.
It looks like something I would have for lunch.
To be honest, I'll give it a 7.5. It's acceptable.
I wish my school would serve this.
This is what I call a healthy lunch.
It smells weird and minty.
It's a little too vegetable-y for me. The wrap is okay.
Does this what your lunch looks like today as well?
It looked nothing like this. 2010? I remember 2010! Michelle Obama was the first lady when I was alive. I would eat this, but there's a lot of kids I know who would be like, ugh, this is too green.
So that's not us. And this is our high school servery. It's meticulously clean. You've been in it. You've seen it. It has an array of vegetables and offerings. This is the pizzas you're eating today. I mean, they're fresh. They're made by a fabulous staff. We have at the Comet Cafe. We've learned how to get everything that we sell in here during the day, or the majority of products, are reimbursable meals. So they're counting toward getting us federal dollars back to our food service department. But it's a different method of serving it. The middle school, you can get hot or cold breakfasts. You can see that there's an array of choices. Kids we have a tough, you've seen how tough our customers are. They are a tough crowd to please. And elementary kitchen, the taco looks beautiful. And we're safe, clean, and healthy. They have fun and celebrations and student engagement. And look at how they are with the children. We talk about everyone makes a difference in our school district, our bus, whether it's a bus driver or a custodian. Look at this. This is just, these pictures just, bless their heart. Catering, we have the ability, if we give our food service their artists, their chefs, we give them lobster or we give them other things to cook, they will cook it well. So there's an opportunity for catering as well in a business model that can actually help your bottom line. The food service cost comparisons, this is kind of what I do when I do cost comparisons. It's a DPI, it's based upon annual reports of all districts. And this just shows you the current food service cost per member is, for Waupaca, it's $569. The state average is $610. So you can say we're under that and we're trying to do our best. And now we're going to get into the exciting data with DAR.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you, Carl. There's a few things that did not get put in your packet that are at your place setting, and I'd like to start out with that. One is the meals per labor hour. There should be 2 sheets. And what that's broken down is from 14, 15, all the way up to present. And it breaks down the meals per labor hour per month for all of those, and per year for all of those years. So if you can, you can look at that throughout. We can kind of come back and forth to it. So what's the next thing that's at your place is this one that kind of summarizes it. If you want to turn to that one. This one has the meals per labor hour summarized. And a meal equivalent is really 1 lunch is 1 meal equivalent, 3 breakfasts is 1 meal, and $3 worth of a la carte is considered 1 meal equivalent. So when you see meals, it's all of those things combined. It's not just plain meals. It takes into consideration all of those 2 factors. I have the chain, I have them broken out by school. We have the chain with Learning Center, the middle school and high school, and you can see throughout the years how the things have changed. For the chain, for instance, has an enrollment of 160. It's a small, conventional production kitchen. We have breakfast that we serve about 24 students today. That's 13%. We also have lunch. There are 2 lunch options, and we have an average of 89 students for a percentage of 56% per day. We also participate in the Wisconsin School Day Milk Program. We call it the Snack Milk Program. We also offer a field trip bag lunch program. We have 1 serving line and 1 computer point of sale. In comparison, we have the Learning Center enrollment of 621. It's a medium conventional production kitchen. We have breakfast and we have hot and cold choices daily. We average about 106 students per day, which is 17%. Lunch, we have 2 options every day. We average 380, and that's 61%. We also have the snack milk program. We also send bag lunches to the Waupaca County Alternative Program. We have bag lunch to the field trip bag lunch program as well. We have 2 serving lines and 2 point of sales, and these are finger scanners. The children scan their fingers. The middle school enrollment of 592 has a breakfast to go cart. They sell about, and I can't see this on here, but it's around 80 breakfasts per day. And they do like the cold Domino's pizza. It is a fave. We have lunch. We have 2 hot choices and 2 cold choices. We also have 2 computer point of sales and serving lines. And we also have that to-go cart point of sale. Participates in the milk program. We have a bag lunch program. We also have a vending program now. So those are ours, but we're also generating income from those sales. The high school, we have the breakfast in the cafe, averaging 137 or 22% of our population. Lunch average 331, which is 53. We have 3 computer point of sales, 6 to 9 lunch choices daily, 1 cafe computer point of sale, a la carte program, catering. We do meeting setups. We have a vending program. We have an apprenticeship program that we have now. A student works for us for 3 hours per day. And we also have the live stream workers working in the department as well. So those are just some added services that we do. So if we want to compare, I already know I have my 2 workforces. We've got the Learning Center and the middle school. And the outliers, of course, are the chain because of the size of the school, the equipment that we have, the layout, the serving, the whole thing. It's going to be lower meals per labor. That's part of the animal. And again, with the high school, we have so many choices, and we do a lot of individualized portioning, so that in itself can have the labor hours kind of go a little bit down. The normal meal equivalents, the average is kind of like 14 to 18, so we vary in between that. And the highlighted portion, I'm going to touch on that later at the end, but there's a highlighted piece on this, so just keep that out for at the end. I'll make my point then. The second thing I would like you to look at, and that is in your packet, it's this meal reimbursement one. It should be the first page in your packet.
While we're looking for that, can I ask a question? If Carl, as Carl said at the beginning, that we run, where if we kind of look at our food service as a business, and we have a limited number of funds that we are able to use mandated, and this, don't take this the wrong way, but if we had more students taking lunches, breakfast, whatnot, would that be a higher cost to us in the long run?
No.
No.
I mean, it would cost more food costs, but the labor, if you have your labor appropriately, we make our money by the meal reimbursements.
Okay, so we would
And
get
so
reimbursed more
yes,
before
and
that.
that's really what I focus on, is I'll allude to a little bit later.
Okay.
You know, I'm just kind of painting the picture of the meals per labor hour, and how some people
Okay.
look at that as a measure of success.
Right. Okay.
So just going back to this one, these are the reimbursement rates that we had across the top. We had 82,000, 13, 14, 15, 83, 93, and then we really, the first year with Chartwell's, we had a tremendous loss, about $141,000, almost 142. The second year with Chartwell's, 30,000. In the 20 years, we have never lost money. So anyway, things that can affect.
I lost money at some point in employment and parents were volunteering participation.
Correct. Right, it wiped out the entire fund balance, and the district had to put in almost $50,000 to cover, to bring us back to zero. You're welcome. Things that can affect the meal reimbursement rates, which is the second portion of that, the number of days per year, the days in the month. So if you look across and you see September, some of the years don't have the same amount of days in a month. The USDA handling charge affects reimbursement rates because they charge more for processing handling some years than others. For instance, with Chartwell's, when they made me do the processing through the state, it was almost $12,000 that they took right off the reimbursements. And then the meals per what there's the reimbursement rates also affected. This year's reimbursement rate is $39 per paid student, reduced is $3.08, and for the free it's $3.48. And I do track these. I track these numbers. So if you look on the right hand, lower right hand corner in gray, you'll see this year's numbers when we're back to Zelda. The difference in September, we had the other ones, the days were the same. So through January, our reimbursement rates are almost $10,000 more than they were last year. So that's positive. So the next thing I would like you to look at is another thing I do track, and that should be in your packet. It's the second page, turn one page, and it's called the total reimbursable meals per month and year. This is something that I do track. It just gives a handle of where you're going and you know where you need to focus your areas. Certain things, again, you know, you'll notice in 16, 17, the high school changed to 2 lunch periods, and we dropped almost 93,500. No, that would be terrible. 9,353 meals from the year before. So a lot of things do factor into. I can't say that is the only reason, but the participation at the high school did drop from 63 to 59 that year, which ties into our reimbursements that were lower by $5,729.
Okay, can I interrupt? Do you think that's just because of the time element? It went from, well, why would there be such a, because of the, it went from 1 to 2 or 3 to 2, whatever it was. What would be the, I mean, the food remains the same, obviously.
Right, I think that there was more students in line, getting them through the lines was an issue.
So it was a
And
time issue.
It was a time, yes. So, But you can see that the ones in red are losses. You know, you see the losses in the two Chartwell's years. Again, down in the, you know, the South year 1920, it is positive. You know, we have 11,496 more meals than we did in the January prior. So trying to focus on the positive. Another thing that I do, I've done with that one. Now if you want to turn your page back to the student participation per month. This is one that I look at all the time, and I do it by school as well, but I didn't want to put too much information. But this gives me a real handle because it takes into consideration the fluctuations in enrollment. You don't have to sit and think, oh, we were down this, and it's all right there. And you can see the comparison from year to year across the top. And then also from the beginning of the year to the end of the year as you go down. Yes, that one. So you can see, for instance, in September as a South we were at 13% at breakfast. And it increased to 16, 17, now it's at 16. We had a lot of sicknesses in December and January, and also in February. And so that number will fluctuate with illnesses. It's just the nature of the business. But I always keep track of that on my reports too. There was snow days, there was kids out, there was something that happened. There were field trips, there were, you know, what a number of different things. So that all is taken into consideration. And if you look down on the 1920, we started out at 55% for lunch, but we're gaining. Went to 58, 59, we're at 60, now we're at 58 again. Sicknesses really contribute a lot to that.
Dar, would you say that if you attracted, and I'm just looking at your numbers here, in September for lunch, you had approximately 55%. If you attracted, I'm just using a round number, 75% of the students, would they stay pretty much then the whole year? Because it doesn't seem to me that, or it seems to me that once they start, they'll stay, the numbers stay pretty consistent.
Well, they do, it kind of, yes. You want to get them right off the bat,
Right.
You do. But you can make improvements over time.
Sure.
But generally speaking, you know, they'll fluctuate a little bit some in the winter months because of sicknesses or whatever. And
Right.
then towards the end of the year, like May, there's field trips, there's.
But once they start, they pretty well are going to stay throughout the year.
Do they fluctuate a little though based on what the menu is?
Oh, yes.
So
Yes, indeed.
on-
And I track that all the time. I get production records every day that I look at.
Uh-huh.
How much we served, what was the temperature, was there leftovers, what did we do with them? And then I write that down on my menu. Oh, this was a failure, or this worked out really great. You know, we almost ran out, let's check this. And I do that per item that we serve and per school. So I have a really good handle on, you know, and sometimes I think something's gonna work and it doesn't. And sometimes I think that it's not, and the kids really liked it. So-
But there's obviously favorites whenever it's
Oh, for
Saturday
sure.
or flock.
I have a question about something that might affect it, and maybe we've already looked at it for this year, but I know we've had discussions about the limited amount of time students have to eat, and things starting early in the day, and then part of their lunch hour is spent waiting in line. If we were able to give students more time to eat, do you think that would affect the number of students who might participate in?
I really do, because a lot of, especially when you like in middle school and in high school too, they don't want to wait in line. That's why the to-go cart at the middle school is so popular, because they can get in and out, and they just have to grab their things and they go. Which helps our service lines as well, because we don't have all of that in there. And we've gone back to serving the same things that they can get through 2 doors. It's not like before that they would have all these options and they would have to cut around at the middle school. We've changed it back to getting them through those lines faster, in other words. So yes, indeed, that would help. So,
Well, one question going along with what Sandy, because we've sort of had brought this up before, but what if we, at the institutions, the schools that have 2 lunches, our population is such now, which has reduced at least at the high school, would it be conducive to just have one lunch hour? No, that's not an option. I mean, I know that the principal was saying, because of programming, but I mean, I understand that part, but that would be, because it would be too many at one time, even if they were time-wise was double.
Well, you guys can speak to that a little bit better than I can.
Yes, so we batch cook a lot of our food. That means you don't prepare it until right before the lunch starts. And if we had to prepare a huge amount of food, by the time the last kids came, that food quality would be dropping. And so therefore, we need time to do it in smaller portions and serve it right away.
And they don't like to wait more than 10 minutes in line. So if you're serving 350 kids, you can't do it in 10 minutes, they'll leave the line.
Okay, good, thank you.
So what do we do to increase revenues, Dar? First of all, we need to increase our offerings or change our offerings. Like I said, I evaluate all the time. We're going to increase our marketing, our school program. We're going to resurrect. We want to do the theme days, the prizes, the lucky trays, the contests, the scratch jobs. We used to do some of those things in the past, but we're going to increase doing that. We're going to improve the food quality. I'm going to get more fresh produce for the USDA. Tomorrow I have to order $75,000 worth of food from the USDA for all of next year. I've looked over the products. I'm trying to find minimally processed, low additives, clean label products, hamburgers without soy. We're even going to use ground beef, raw ground beef, instead of the cooked crumbles. So that's all positive. This year we started baking the dinner rolls. They're the frozen Rich's dinner rolls, but they smell good, they taste good. And I diverted some flour to that program, so that's a cost savings as well. The same with the pizza crust is from Rich's. I want to make homemade soups, salad dressings. I have a lot of ideas. Another thing that we want to do is engage. We want to engage the students. We want to do more sampling, more taste testing. I would like the kids maybe to grow some herbs in their classrooms that we could use in our products. Maybe take a cart down to Mrs. Ersbaumer's kindergarten class and have them whisk together a simple strawberry vinaigrette for the lunch for the kids. They like doing those little things. Or we could have them make a fresh ranch dipping sauce with fresh herbs and Greek yogurt. Have the kids get involved in doing that. Maybe with the base class, I can give them supplies and a couple recipes. We'll give them the supplies, they can cook it, they can sample it, they can taste it, they can share it with their views, and we can put it on just to try to engage the students. Another thing we can do is to inform. We do have this new system, it's called Healthy Pro. It has online menu analysis, it has meals per labor hour, it has food costs, it has beautiful pictures, it has nutrient analysis where if a student is gluten-free, it's all on there. I've been working to get that up and running, but we're not quite there yet. But that'll be a huge marketing thing. It also ties into the student announcement boards. Parents can go online and look at it. Another thing we'd like to do in the future to inform is have our own food service website program. So I'm anxious to get that started. Another thing we want to do is focus. Like I said, my focus has always been on the reimbursable meals. Vending is great, a la carte's great, milk money from this national program, that's gravy money to me. But it helps the bottom line, it really does. But my focus, I feel, is on the reimbursable meals. So I'm going to focus on breakfast. I like to think about a second chance breakfast, maybe at the middle school, a to-go cart. Maybe better options for the to-go cart, do breakfast in the classroom, maybe just offer some different choices as well as the cafe. And I would like to look into more of the special diets and get the gluten-free and the diabetics and the vegetarians on board. We also could use some signs. kind of bare in there right now, but I didn't want to spend the money, so that'll, look nice next year. So all this is possible, it's really not that far off, I can see it. But there's some things we need to do first. First, I need to fill some positions. I need to shovel the hole shut because there was a lot of damage. I lost 1/3 of my employees in the past 3 years. Labor is not the enemy, labor is my friend. So I'd like you to go back to the highlighted portion and take a look at that number. You won't have it, it'll be on your handout. It'll be on the handout. Did you see it? So it says 19. Great. Isn't that the number we're all looking for? Great meals per labor hour, right? Look at the meals from one year to the next. Almost 10,000 down. Labor slashed. That was the learning center where we worked. They killed us there. I had to cut people so bad that people were getting hurt. If I would have done everything Chartwell's made me do, we wouldn't have a crew. So this number, excuse me, this number is something that we have to be very careful. It sounds really good. Oh, we got 19 meals. But be careful with it because there's consequences too. Thinking this is the end of number, and it's not. I know we can do better. I know once I get my labor, I have excellent people. Really, really good people. We can do it. I know we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Please pass our appreciation on your entire staff.
May I just ask you one question, and take as much time as you need, but what about local? There's a lot of talk about local products. I'm talking about local things that might be available year-round. Dairy foods, eggs, meats, and whatnot. Do we do anything to try and encourage some of the purchases of those from our local area, or do we just go through our distribution person?
We do consider it, and that's part of like Carrie's Farm to School program, where she'll get cranberries or honey from local people. We used to get apples from Christensen's orchards. We kind of have to, the dairy and the meat's a little tricky. I do get a lot of that from the USDA. If we were to buy, for instance, like eggs from a local farmer, they would have to be certified. Their practices have to be certified. I did consider talking to the Piggly Wiggly and the, what's that other store? That one. Yes, about possibly having a bid on some hamburger buns or something like that, that they could be fresh daily versus the ones we get from. So I do think about it. It is in the back of my mind.
Well, I only bring it up because, as you well know, it's being talked about everywhere.
It is.
And I know it's difficult for institutions. It's easy for individuals, but it's not so easy for institutions. But I'm just curious as to where we were.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Doc. I
Thank
just
you
have
for
one
your
final word.
presentation, and again, please convey our thanks to your entire staff.
Just one final note on the year-to-date budget. And as Andy has, we took a long time to put this report together, but actually it's paying dividends, especially tonight. So if you look at this budget year-to-date report that's on where we're going, if you look at last year, you can see last year we were roughly at revenue sources. We were basically at about, I'm trying to read it, 30 or 28%, 39%. This year it's 35%. If you look at expenses, at this time, the prior year, we were at 46% basically expended, and this year we're at 44.9. So we're relatively close. So we came in really well last year. So we're anticipating that the year-to-date, everything's staying the same. We will be fiscally on track to have a balanced budget, or better. And if you remember that we indicated that we would have about $113,000 in equity, fund equity, we're on track for that. So just to let you know, the budget year-to-date, we're on track to move forward to balance this budget as presented at the October board meeting. The next page, people asked about grants, and I didn't really know how to go about this, but I took federal and state grants, not all of them, the major ones, and this just shows you the total of all our grants, the Carl Perkins, the titles, the charter school program, the teach grants, the technology, reading readiness, and there's more grants that are out there, but I tried to get the big ticket items, and every year we maximize 100% revenue. By June 30th, we'll have $1.3 million. Prior problems then. So all these grants that are out there, these major grants, we're in line to claim them all. And so we're in good revenue shape as far as grants.
Well, you know, along that line, and I know I've talked to Mr. Sari about this a little bit, and we've all kind of conversed a little. As you mentioned, it's great to have all of these lists, don't get me wrong, but there are a lot of them that we could be going after if we had somebody in charge, and we've talked about that a little bit on terms of our personnel, you know, somebody who was doing nothing, I don't say nothing more, but always alert to what grants are out there, and then maybe secure some of them. And certainly Janet knows, because we had some opportunities to do some in the tech ed department. And they're not always small grants either. I mean, granted, it's great to get a $5,000, $10,000 grant, but some of them are $50,000, $100,000. If we, you know, put our minds to it or found somebody within our staff, it might pay some really good dividends for us. Just a thought for the future. I'm not suggesting at this point, but it's something that could certainly pay for itself if we directed somebody in that direction.
I'm only smiling because it says.
Yeah, well, it's a suggestion to talk about. That's all.
And I'd like to just add, I love this report.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. On to student and staff wellness.
Well, good evening. This is quite a report to follow.
It is.
So I apologize, I don't have any videos or a PowerPoint presentation for you, but we did just take some time to put together some information about student and staff wellness. When we talk about wellness, very often physical wellness is what comes to mind, but it also includes aspects of that academic wellness, our emotional wellness, as well as social input. So all of those pieces play a role within that. It's definitely not an exhaustive list, because after I gave this to Sandy last week, I started jotting down all sorts of additional things on my copy. Obviously, our goal as a district is to continue to build connections and promote positive experiences. But we also want to be able to sustain the level of what we have. We also want to maximize our capacity within our staff and students, but we also don't want to chase the next shiny thing, especially if it doesn't fit in with the Waupaca way of doing business. So really focusing on that, and I think it ties into a lot of the discussions our Board of Education is having in regards to strategic planning and how the things we are attracted to fit into that strategic plan within our district. So you can see the list of pieces, and after our board retreat the other day, I made sure I had all of my acronym definitions with me because I did not have them all defined. So our second bullet there talks about the best student screener. That's the behavioral, emotional, social trends screener that we use K-8 in our district, that's identified by staff to really look at students of concern. That's a confidential screener done by staff input on our students, and that data is reviewed by our student services teams at our elementary schools and our middle school. The Catalpa Host Program is a program that our district pays for to have services from Catalpa in our high school and middle school. HOST stands for Helping Our Students Thrive. That's a program that Catalpa started in the Valley before they started a clinic here in Waupaca, and we will continue to look for ways to expand that program. We currently have one full day at the high school and one half day at the middle school, and we could use a full day easily in every building in our district. Our student mental health needs are significant. The HOST program allows students to receive services at school through, the payment is through their healthcare providers, but also supplemented by the district to keep help a whole, but it also keeps our students in school. Because oftentimes when a student needs to leave school for an appointment, they often miss more than that hour. They miss closer to a half day, or if they have to travel out of town, up to a full day. And obviously that student attendance is important.
Can I ask you a question about
Yes.
that? When you're talking about the Catalpa program
Mhm.
and one day here and half day there,
Yep.
is that their meeting of students during that day in one of our buildings?
Correct.
Do you have any idea how many of those students then may have follow-up with those Catalpa people?
Usually, the majority of those students, their services are all at school. If they're meeting with them weekly, et cetera. But a person that's servicing us for one day a week, a counselor that may be here one day a week, can see 6 to 8 students. You know, that's a very small grasp at a significant need of student programming.
And is the Catalpa person that comes generally the same person?
Yes, it's the same person week after week at our sites. So it's a different person at WLC in middle school, they're there a half day for each of those buildings, than it is for the one day a week person at the high
But there is
school.
continuity.
Yes, absolutely, great question. We have a number of community connections for student employment and job shadows. I look at our Waupaca Works classroom, it's just phenomenal. I'm so proud of the work that is done there by our high school, by our students, by our staff, and the programs that we're able to bring in to really enrich what our students are looking at. The extracurricular and athletic opportunities. I listened to the things we talk about at the board when we've had the magical students singing at our board meetings. Tonight we have students playing girls basketball and boys hockey in postseason action that are going on in our community, and they have quite a following when you come to our home events. So all of those great things. And it's wonderful having Joe Spertoli here leading those efforts in our district. We have a lot to be grateful for there. The family fun nights that are held at our elementary level. A wide variety of student services programming. All of the health screenings that are done. Today, Seal a Smile was here at WLC. We also do annual hearing and vision screenings at early childhood, 4K and K, as well as 3rd, 5th, and 7th. We have a 7th grade health fair. We also do child find screenings as we look for those students that are between the ages of 3 and 5 before they're in our school programs to identify whether or not they may have a disability. So all of those pieces that are going on, as well as a number of family health resources, that's linked to our website for our school nurse. We have a number of homeless resources as well as family resources that aren't always linked to housing or housing stability, but also for additional information. Our school social workers, Leah Zemer and Ann Collins-Reed, do a phenomenal job keeping that section of our website up to date with materials for parents on how to work on food scarcity, where can I go to get my car fixed, who do I talk to about health insurance or dental care. So all of those things are pieces that our families come to us on a daily basis for, that we try to help fill in those gaps. We did the school perception survey this year. That was also student wellness based and from our families. I just mentioned our school social workers as well as school to work opportunities. We have a number of different student groups that do great things. I know we've talked about Students Against Destructive Decisions, bringing in speakers for the district. Our Link crew that provides a transition opportunity for those students coming into 9th grade and really getting to be part of our school district. Even with listening to Carl and Dar talk about our breakfast and lunch programs and how they're always continuing to tweak those programs that we have to meet the needs for all of our students. Because if our students are wondering about where their next meal is coming from, how are they able to learn? So, looking at that piece of making sure our students are fed. As well as our comic kickoffs that happen at our high school on Wednesdays. Our teachers also lead a number of different connections-based programs. One is called DOTS, or Depending on Teachers and Students. I know the middle school just did this. They had pictures of every student in the school with their name on boards throughout their staff meeting. And every staff member got so many stickers, so many dots. And they went up and put a dot by that many students that they really felt they had a strong connection with. So that's great. We have students with 10 and 20 dots, but then we have students with 1 or maybe 2. So who are the students in our schools that need us to be making those connections with them? Because what we want to make sure is every student in our school has an adult that they trust, that they can go to and connect with when they come to school and feel like they have an ally here. An adult doesn't always agree with a student, but if they have a level of trust and that relationship that we work on building, we can get there.
So Lori, what would be the follow-up to that for those students who only had one?
Typically what our staff does is then they identify, okay, so a lot of our teams at the middle school then identified, okay, let's take the number of 5th grade students that we had with not a lot of connections, and who are the people that are going to check in with those students. And they identified that and said, okay, we're gonna make those contacts with that student. We also have our 18 to 21 LIVE program, that lifelong independent vocational education program. That had lunch for us last Friday when we all met. So those ongoing future aspirations of what we want to look at with students, some of them will mirror what we'll talk about with staff, but it's our safety education and learning. We need to continue to educate our students about school safety and those procedures that we take on a daily basis so they understand it and they're able to talk about it. You're going to hear more tonight about the Speak Up Safety Tip Line. The social emotional learning and healthy decisions is something that we're constantly working on. A couple of years ago, DPI came out with social emotional learning competencies. It's an unfunded mandate of, hey, let's put these things in place and really looking at how we can integrate those into all of our classes. As well as putting into place some level of wellness screening for our high school students. We have that BEST screener right now at K-8 that really identifies students. And we've been talking with the wellness screen at Samaritan, and actually this afternoon before the board meeting, I was also on a webinar with a behavior emotional social screener that's available for middle and high school students. So just looking at different options that are fiscally sustainable, but meet the need that we have for our students. So from the student perspective, that's kind of that 30,000 foot view of the things that are going on. As for our staff, our Amwell service, which is our telehealth, I think it's phenomenal that we have a telehealth office in every one of our buildings, and they're lovely places. It's a secure private place where someone can go and take care of a mental health appointment, take care of a screening with a physician or a nurse practitioner. And according to Mr. Hayek, we're one of the largest consumers of that practice, correct?
Yeah, we are the #1 user in the book of business for WVA.
Can you speak up a little?
We're the #1 user of the telehealth. So in the WVA book of business, meaning that it's a cost savings as well, because the telehealth visit versus emergency room visit or normal visit, you're talking $25 versus $150, $500. It directly interrelates with our bottom line, our health insurance renewal.
But for someone to be able to utilize that room versus maybe going out to their car on their lunch to make a phone call or finding somewhere private to do it, it's very nice to have those facilities right here within our walls. Along with that, there are a ton of building level staff events. When we want to speak to climate and culture in our buildings, this is something that definitely does. While we want to have connections with our students, we also want our staff to have connections with each other. So the lunches that they put together at the high school, the things that we've done in district office to celebrate a new baby or a life event, the Sunshine Club that celebrates with people for celebrations or for tragedy. I think those are all wonderful things that help us build that capacity of a family here as a district. We have our employee assistance plan, our EAP. We've done a lot of education around our EAP this year, making sure our staff knows what it is and where to find that information. We have a health insurance committee that Mr. Hayek leads and has staff come back and participate in that as we have those discussions. It has to be something that we can talk about and not talk over or talk through, but we have to communicate about those challenges that health insurance brings us as a district. We also have a number of district level committees based on interest. Mr. Sari leads a teacher panel. We have groups, we have our MLSS coaches meet, we have our tech coaches meet. We support that collaboration and integration, especially through our PLC time that is done weekly. Our perception surveys again. And then our staff wellness committee. Mr. Hayek, Jamie Trebatuski, Hannah Rowe, our district office, they run some great events. The holiday trio events, just encouraging healthy eating, healthy lifestyles. They want to bring back more regular newsletters. They have fitness challenges. We've had a number of different exercise classes being offered in the past. None of them have had a lot of great traction, but still, if it was something that staff wanted to try, people were willing to organize that and bring that in. We've had a number of trainings across our district in trauma-informed care and adverse childhood experiences. Our student services teams are also putting together smaller modules of training to take to grade level teams and building level teams to talk around some of those specific areas of need of our students. We also have a Vitality Wellness program. So while I don't take WEA insurance through the school district, that's also the insurance plan I'm on through my spouse, we have Vitality Wellness as well. There are some quizzes that you can take, some activities that you can track, and it puts money back into your pocket to offset your deductible costs. Ours at my house typically come in the form of a gift card, like from Visa or MasterCard that we can use to shop. So all of those opportunities for our staff. Some of our future aspirations with our staff, again, involve that safety education and training. Just last week, we had a team of 7 of us that attended the Department of Justice Office of School Safety's Standard Response Protocol training in Oshkosh. We were in Oshkosh. There were over 600 educators, police officers, et cetera, there learning more about this program. Wisconsin is definitely working very hard to build a more standard operating procedure approach to school safety, and it's all coming at the same time while schools are trying to put these systems in place. So a continued focus on overall standard operating procedures for a great number of things when it comes to onboarding our new staff members, when it comes to school safety. I already talked about the trauma-sensitive school self-care training that our WLC staff is doing. But so many activities to reboot and revisit, and people are excited to do the work. There's always people there that want to assist and want to help. So, like I said, kind of that 30,000-foot view of the things that are going on. And I don't think we'd ever be able to complete an exhaustive list, but obviously thank you to the board for supporting those efforts that are already in place and the things that will continue to be stressed.
Thank you. Questions?
I just have a quick question, but it's for Ann. And I know we're going to look at the student or the perception surveys a little bit. And was there anything in this report talking about what was done on behalf of for students that surprised you or that you want to reflect on at this point?
No, I knew about most stuff that goes on as for like wellness and stuff. It's communicated well to those who need it. I have a couple of friends who actually partake in the counseling here on at the high school, and it's very helpful for them because they won't be able to afford it otherwise. Like, it's just not something that their family would be able to do. And so it's just very helpful for them to just be able to stick around school and then have that meeting right here. So I know personally that's helping a lot of people what's going on here. So I'm very proud of our school for doing that kind of stuff.
Thanks.
Anything else? Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to board reports. We'll start with the meetings attended and school visits. And for meetings attended, we will exclude the convention down in Milwaukee. We have a forum that Mr. Sari had provided us to provide thoughts on, and we can look at some of those things at a future workshop. So with that, anyone have something they'd like to report?
I attended the Change School this month. I was at Mrs. Harris's class of 18 first graders, and they happened to be working on a math lesson, which I kind of liked. Emphasis was placed on reading. They were looking at bar graphs, and this is a math resource that they are piloting this year. I notice I said it's a math resource, not a math curriculum. because our curriculum is already in place or hitting there. The books and stuff that they choose are just resources for that curriculum. The kids had to not only calculate an answer based on the data that was in the bar graph, but then they had to write about the data. They had to interpret it. I was really pleased. Then at the end, she had the kids say, all right, we will do this group discussion first. They had a group discussion on it, really pointing out to make sure you mentioned the title so that you knew what the data was about. And then they had to do something at their desks. And because they knew that I was Mr. Felt's dad, which is my son's charter school out there, they lined up. I had like 15 of them, and Miss Harris had 3. So they all came up and showed me their work, and they did a very nice job. So keeping those kids in line, keeping everybody, I don't want to say in line, but everybody on task was a chore with 18 little first graders, but she did a very, very nice job.
Okay, thank you. I'll go next, and Steve stepped out for a second, but I'll be real brief. I went over to the WLC today. In fact, I said goodbye to Mr. Ersbomber as he was leaving the door to go to the hockey game. They're up in Eagle River. They had to leave pretty early today. I visited primarily the elementary, early elementary, and I spent most of the time talking to Mrs. Anderson. We talked for quite a long time in her class because her son Connor was in the play, and we kind of chatted about that for a long time. But I was real impressed with her class. They were working on some reading exercises. And what really, and just briefly, while we were just chatting like this, a couple students came up, and one of them said, wanted to go to the bathroom or something, and she said, excuse me. And at first I thought because she didn't hear, and the student was supposed to say, excuse me, Mrs. Anderson, because she knew I was talking with another adult. And she did that to a couple of students to give them the protocol and, the idea, which I thought, gosh, and the kids were really receptive. They were like, excuse me, Miss Anderson, which was really great. Really well-disciplined classroom, fun to talk to the kids a little bit, and so forth. So it was nice. It was a short visit, and I didn't get a chance to see everybody but up there, but I certainly walked around a little bit and had a good time with that. So that was my visit.
And I am looking forward to visiting the middle school, but I do want to say how much I enjoyed the breakfast that administration hosted for us with the support and help of food service and the preparation. It was a wonderful event, and the speaker was very skilled. It was a great presentation, and I just want to say thank you for that. And also acknowledge having also gone to see 2 flags for Marco. What a wonderful event that was. I went on the Sunday matinee, and there was a group from the Veterans Home who also came. Very touching. So glad that I went, and looking forward to the book. And thank you very much, Pat, for being a part of that experience, and to the community members who joined with our high school students in presenting.
And just an aside on that, as I mentioned to Steve earlier, the best part of that, from my perspective, is that collaborative effort. And I just hope in the future we have more opportunities for those people, meaning their older adults and our students. And Abby knows this as well, because she helped with some of the criticism a little bit early on. But it's really great to have that ability, experiences for everybody. People see a show for 2 hours, but those folks work for 6 weeks together, day after day, and there were some pretty strong bonds that were built, and people were really amazed at how each side could, act and perform and be supportive of each other. It was just a great experience from that point of view. It doesn't matter whose work they're working with, the fact that they're working together is the key.
And one last thing to the, I always get this wrong, live group, and then live. Sorry, I'm gonna have to find a way to.
That's okay. It took me a while.
But you had mentioned that we had catered lunch on last Friday when we met. It was terrific.
There were a lot of ladies who were great.
Well, I have things to report. First of all, I made my visit, and I actually had to go to the LIV program and then to Chuck Peters' program, the at-risk program. And I had a lovely visit with both. The students in the LIV program were they just kind of take your breath away. They're so honest, they're so real. They are so excited about what they're doing, and as Sandy mentioned, we had lunch the other day catered by them. So I sat and talked about their shopping experience and how excited they were, and they had to go to different stores because different stores don't have certain things, and whatever, and the preparation and the buying and the lists, and how much actually goes into that process to be able to put on that day like that, and how well it's supported by our community and teachers in the schools and whatever. It is such a wonderful program. But they were also, I asked them about the program in general, and they were so excited. I didn't know that they do this, but they said, I can't remember if it's Tuesday or Wednesday, they go to is it the Ramada now? What is it? Best Western, our hotel out there, whatever it is. I should know that. But they go there and they clean the pool area, and then after they clean the pool, they're able to swim. And so how appreciative they are for that. And then on Tuesday or Wednesday, they go to the carousel gymnastics place, and they clean there, and then they're able to use all the gymnastics equipment and the trampolines and things. And so they said how proud they are to work there, but then how much they enjoy being able to play with each other and whatever. One of the other young ladies in the program, she was so proud. She works at Sunny Day. And so she was so proud to be able to report about her work there and her employment there, and how much she loves the little children, and but how exhausting they are. But she was so informative, and she spoke that she's going to be old enough to graduate from our program this year. And so while she was excited to be able to graduate, she was also sad because she said she really will miss the program because it's been so wonderful to her. So that was great to visit with them. Then I went up and sat down and visited with Mr. Chuck Peters and Maureen Newman and some of their students, and talked about their program. And they were really excited about a different version of the GED program that they can run now, where it's actually based on proficiencies rather than a certain number of hours. So if they have students that are sick and haven't been able to attend class, but yet they feel are proficient in a subject, they're able to test out by taking these tests. So they were actually working on those tests with the kids, or setting up those tests for the young people, and how they have a really good percentage rate of success with that. And so we're fortunate to be able to offer that to some of the students. I asked them how many students they had in the program, and they said they had just sent out 54 letters to parents for parent-teacher conferences. So in any given week, they're motoring 54 students into their program. I think they do a wonderful job. And the students that were there really seemed excited about the program, and more importantly, very grateful that that program is offered, because I really think it provides success for kids that maybe would be on the fringe that wouldn't be successful as we would frame it. So that was the school visit. And then that's been talked about. I went to the threat assessment class that was offered here. It was an all-day class offered for our teachers, and actually teachers and administrators in the area. And there were probably about 60 or 70 of them that were there. We spent the whole day in the library. It was put on by the Department of Justice of Wisconsin. And I learned so many things at that session. I was made aware of so many things in that session. And it was basically about how we assess threats in our district, in our schools, whether that be through phones, or whether that be through young people, or however those threats come. They needed a unified program to be able to assess those. What is the risk involved? How severe is the risk? And some of the things that I highlighted, I had pages of notes that I took. But it's interesting that what you just talked about, Lori, was what they talked about, that one of the most important things is that our young people need to have a trusted relationship with someone in our district. And when you just talked about that DOT program, it's like, oh my goodness, That's so important because that's precisely what they said, that every young person needs to have someone that they can trust and they can go to. And more importantly, that they know they will be believed and something will be done. So it was kind of a three-step process. And how important that is in helping with a decrease in the number of threats that we have. They also said that most threats that happen or incidents that happen in a school can be prevented. And there was some warning, and if, the powers that be, if the administration, if the teachers, if other students are aware of it and look for the warning signs, and there was a whole list of warning signs, that most of those threats can be eliminated. And they ended by saying, if you have a question, if you should say something, then you need to say something. That was like the classic statement. If you question if you should, then you should. It's kind of like if you think it's wrong, then it's probably wrong. So it was wonderful to be informed, to be aware, because I know that's kind of big on every school agenda right now, and every school, and not just our state and our country. So I was just really impressed with how articulate the training was, how precise it was, but more importantly, how everybody there took it so seriously and realizes that as a community we have a problem, but we can all be a solution to that problem. So thank you for bringing it on. I don't know who planned it or how it came here and why we were lucky enough to have it here in Waupaca, but I know some of the teachers had driven 2.5 hours from other districts to get here by 8 o'clock that morning. So to me, it just shows, again, how dedicated people are in education. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for attending.
Very good, thank you. Moving on, item B under 9 would be board norms. As everybody recalls, we spent a fair amount of time looking at or establishing some board norms. We had a rather lengthy discussion. I don't know if everybody's had the opportunity to see the product that was developed after our last meeting. We have actually two. One was the board norms, and then a second draft, which is the one that's currently up on the screen.
Is that?
It's the draft.
Is that the first draft or the second draft?
Second draft.
Oh, okay.
Were we going to adopt these through some kind?
Up to this group if they want to adopt it tonight.
Through a motion?
Yes.
Okay. Well, before we make a motion, you mentioned this is the second draft, so is there anything that we would change on this if we adopted it? I'm looking at Mark because you kind of put some of the wording in here.
I didn't put the polishing touches on it.
Mark and I weren't able to get together, so I just did it.
Okay.
This is different.
Well, I received some input from Steve.
I see.
And so I kind of took that, Steve Johnson, and I kind of took that, and some of them are exactly the same, and some of them are just tweaked a little bit, and then we added number 7.
If the board would prefer not to adopt at this point in time, that's fine as well. We can do that in another meeting.
The words that you have that are in parentheses, Mark, did you put those in there?
Yeah, that was last when we were together.
Yeah, when we were together. Okay, I mean, I'm just wondering if you put them in there as sort of tentative, or that's going to be part of.
No, those were definitive.
Okay.
So
Right.
when we read that book, the chapter, the board is considering.
Governing tactical and operational. Okay.
Administration was tactical and the service operation.
I'll make a motion that we agree upon the Board of Education norms and that we follow them at every meeting.
Motion to adopt as presented in the draft. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion?
No, not discussion as such, but one of the things we did say that they are norms that can be altered, changed whenever. I mean, there are So
The
if we
board-
find.
The board has that prerogative to change
Exactly.
it tomorrow if
Yeah,
they choose to.
exactly right. So that's good.
Those were nice changes. Also.
Any other discussion?
Only, Ron, were we going to get a copies of these then? What was your thinking on that?
We're planning on laminating a copy so that we can have them at your spot for every meeting. We'll add them to the agendas, so every one of our agendas will have them at the top, and I'd like to have a poster or something that we could, a bigger version that we could hang someplace in our room here.
Okay, sounds good.
And then Betty's making norms.
Norms.
Oh, yeah, you got the norms. Okay, yeah, I got that.
So we can laminate those here, so
Okay,
bring
I'll
them
bring
in.
you the pictures and everything, and then.
Perfect.
Other questions, comments, or discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good, thank you. Then we will move on to upcoming meetings and other activities. I'm sorry, would you like to cover those, please?
Sure, we have the FFA Staff Appreciation Breakfast this Thursday, the 27th, at 6:30 to 7:30. On March 2nd, we have two items. We've got the board retreat, that's this Monday at 11. And then at 6 in the evening, we have the academic banquet taking place. I believe that's in the cafeteria, is that right?
In the Commons.
Commons. March 5th, we have the expulsion hearing at 1. The 23rd, a personnel committee at 1. And then our regular March meeting is moved to the 24th at 5:50.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to the Finance Committee.
Yes, our committee met with all board members being present on February 3rd. And we had, it was our chance to review the audited financial report for the year 2018-2019. And Mr. Hayek and Karen Kerber from our audit firm, Kerber Rose, were there to present. And it was a very interesting meeting, and I would say very well received, quite detailed, and I think the upshot is that we're in great financial position, that our fund balance increased from the beginning of the year at about $8.6 million to the end of the year at $9.2 million. And so that was really good news, and our auditor confirmed in a number of ways, pointed out areas where we were very, very strong, and congratulated us on that. And she also advised us, and this is pursuant to new DPI and federal requirements, that there is an audit of the Chain Exploration Center coming up due by April 17th. It is an audit that is distinct from the audited financials of the district as a whole, and is required because the CDC is a sub-grantee for the federal grant that was awarded to Wisconsin. And so they will be working on that. And again, we really appreciated that Ms. Kerber was there, and we had an opportunity to ask questions. And I do have a motion made by the committee based on a recommendation to the full board that we accept the annual financial audit for the year ending June 30, 2019 as corrected. And the motion had carried unanimously on a voice vote, so bring it forward to the board.
Okay, as a motion is coming from committee to the board, it needs no second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of accepting the audit as updated or corrected?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Can I ask Sandy one question before we get off? And it isn't about the budget per se, but it is finance. Sandy, where are we? And I know we've talked about this before, but we're getting the snapshot of our present budget on a monthly basis.
We have that in the financial reports each month. It's under the treasurer's report. It's the second page of the treasurer's
Okay.
report. And Carl gave us a printed copy of it.
Okay, that's the one that was on
Yeah.
on the table tonight.
Yeah,
All right, I didn't
it's
see
the
it.
operating expense, and it does compare this year to last.
Okay, good, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Carl.
That's the report I said I love. This
Oh,
report.
yeah, I thought that was referred to something else. Okay, good.
That moves us to the Personnel Committee.
Personnel Committee met on February 5th at 1 o'clock here in the community room. And all of the members of our committee were present. I was present by phone. And the item on the agenda was to discuss the a pay increase for the secretaries of our district. When we had our October meeting, we had approved pay raise for our aides. And then after that meeting, at the end of October at our budget hearing, we found out that there was additional monies in our budget that we had planned on. And so we looked at comparables for secretaries around districts surrounding us of equal size. And Carol presented to the board that day a comparison of salaries around. And we are aware that our secretaries were below what other secretaries in our district or our area are. So based on that, and based on the fact that we want to bring our employees up to par with other districts around, a motion was made and seconded that we bring before the board that our secretaries get a 50% hour raise retroactive.
Not
percent.
Not a percent, excuse me, 50 cents.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm reading cents, percent. Yay.
Carl, what's
Yay.
Carl?
Sorry.
You'd have been a very popular person.
Yay, wouldn't that be nice? 50 cent per hour raise retroactive to January 1st of this year. And the motion was carried unanimously. So we are bringing it to the board tonight to move on that.
Motion being from committee, requires no second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the instructional committee.
Okay, the instructional committee met on, and my computer died, so thank you, Mark, February 19th at 1 p.m. here, and at that point, all committee members were present, along with Sandy, Mark, and Mr. Hackett. Mr. Johnson was excused. But I believe you're here on the phone, weren't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So here, Mark brought, and maybe I'll let Mark go ahead and speak on the, if you would like to, on the Gifted and Talented Handbook, and that you're presenting to the board. Update, it's a revised version.
Yeah, it's an updated, revised. It hasn't been really revised since 2014 officially, so it was time to make some changes. So we brought it forth and try to be more inclusive and try to utilize our resources, maximize them to make sure we're servicing as many students as possible. Not that 1%, but as many percentile at the top as we possibly can. So a little bit of a change in philosophy to it.
And that, if you haven't looked at it, those parents that are interested, it will be posted on the school district website. It covers the identification process, the tiers of support a child can receive, extra criteria, the tiers and enrichment activities, students transferring in from other schools, and how to handle if a student is going to be leaving the program. So I don't think that any action had to be taken, if I remember correct, that we just had to bring it to here and say that it has been updated. Do we have to accept it? Oh, motion, okay.
Yeah.
Motion to accept that new handbook then is what we're bringing to the board.
Okay, there's a committee motion, needs no second, so all in favor, any discussion? All in favor of approving the 2020 Gifted and Talented Handbook as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And the second that we covered that day, that would have been on the school calendars for 2021 and the 21-22 school year. And Mr. Flayton helped put those together. He gave us a lot of information. And those calendars then, because I've been on those past calendar committees, and there's been a lot of discussion every year. And I think you did a really nice job with looking at the surveys that were produced, that some nice articles that you had in there that came up. And I think you tried to really come to a cultural, or just fulfill what everybody's requirement was, what they wanted. And so I think we should bring that to, we're going to bring that as a motion to accept those calendars. There was one change that I noticed that was put in, and that was to put the graduation date as tentative in there. The other nice thing that parents will see is that you've tried to make it so that the spring break would occur around the same week in March, that there's now going to be possibly a day off, or there is going to be a day off in October. For back to that, if you remember, some of us can remember back to the day where we had those fall breaks, and that was a big want by students and educators. So I think the consistency of the calendar, Mark, is what really will be good for parents to be able to plan their schedules, and for teachers and students to plan their schedules as we move forward. So with that, the committee is bringing a motion to the for a vote from the board to accept these two calendars, to accept the calendars.
Okay, motion to approve the 2021 and the 21-22 school year calendars. No second is necessary, coming from the instructional committee. Any discussion?
Yeah, I have one thing, Steve, can I have your calendar? This is really picky, but you're coloring, I mean, you color in all the different days. You didn't color in, for instance, I'm looking at August 20th, staff comes in the 25th and 26th. There's nothing on there for staff coming in, and I only say that because the teachers are gonna look at this as well.
Yeah, so this is meant for students.
Well, why would it be
It's meant for
different?
everybody, but
Well, then it would seem to me that you'd want to put those, shade those in so that the staff know exactly when they're going to be starting on both those years as well. The only days that aren't shaded for whatever reason.
So shade them green.
Sure, I can shade it with different colors.
Different color.
Well, you already have the 27th shaded in green, so possibly you could just shade.
We can shade it a different color.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it just visually, I think it works, and it's good for everybody to say, oh yeah, we're starting right on this date, as a staff person.
I'd like to note just one other really nice thing about this that I don't recall seeing before. That doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but that you're getting a sense of how we're going to handle inclement weather days and what impact that's going to have on the potential impact on the school year, so that people can start planning for what might be at least a typical.
And I think that's important that you brought that up, Sandy, especially for parents to read on here and saying, okay, we might have April 5th off, that's scheduled.
Yep.
But if we have a snow day before then, and we have to make that one up, then we might not have that day. So plan accordingly.
And to have a better sense of what's the outside
Yes.
that we're looking at for when the year ends
Yeah.
as well. That's really
That's taking away all those questions that we always had.
Yeah.
So you can see the tentative was added
Right.
here.
Yep.
The only other thing that was changed in this 2021 calendar, the ACT date was released since the creation of the calendar. So this is the second ACT date. The state gives 3. There's the early one, there's the second one, and then there's the emergency one. The first one is actually during our spring break. That's okay. That's okay. That's why they give 3 days. So this is the second testing date, and then there's an emergency testing date in April as well. And the other date that was put out there was the Aspire dates for freshmen and sophomores as well. That it's more of a time frame. We try to get it done in one day so it doesn't lag out there forever.
Is it to our advantage to have the later date for those tests?
There's mixed on that one. There's not a whole lot of schools that have done that. I mean, at some point in time,
Bike shaking.
Say one shaking their head no, one shaking their
I
head
got the
yes.
quitters.
I mean, in a 2-week time period, you're not going to increase your scores. And one of the things that we've really tried to do, and sorry to detract, but one of the things we've really tried to do is make sure our staff is well educated early on in the school year so that we're not waiting until March 1st to roll out the ACT red carpet. We should be mimicking as much as possible what is expected out of our students in this important assessment, starting pretty close to September 1st.
The motion that is the calendar itself as presented. Any further discussion on the calendar?
It is on the calendar, but I want to make sure that we do remind parents that are going to receive this, that you said, even though only juniors are going to be here on the 23rd, that at least at the high school, there's online school for the other kids. Is that correct?
No.
You took that out?
Right.
Okay.
I mean,
So
in order
I remember
to
we
really
said that
make that,
before.
in order to make that really official,
Okay.
there's about 8 steps we have to put into place.
Okay, all right, because I thought I
So-
read that in there before.
Yeah, and after some further review, that was a carryover from a pipe dream. Couldn't have been on there.
Okay.
So I apologize. Same way with the Aspire Day over here.
All right, other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Moves us on to the administration section.
So we just have our second Friday in January enrollment count for you. And that's so small I can't even read it. But it's just something for you to be aware of every year. This month, we share this information with you.
There was only a difference of 4 students, I think, if I remember, 5, maybe something like that. 4 or 5.
We had another one, Sandy, was that,
Yes, if you scroll down.
if you scroll down, okay, the second one is a little bit more meaningful in regards to showing from the year 2010 to 11, where we had a total FTE of 2,275. Look at this year, total FTE of 2,058, and it really shows that declining enrollment that we're experiencing, and the reason why we're talking about marketing and communication and Waupaca growth team and those types of things. So it's something that we really have to work and focus on. Any questions on that?
There's school handbooks.
Okay, the handbooks, there weren't a lot of changes in them, and I'm not really prepared to speak about them, but I know the principals are out here. It's just the run-of-the-mill, pretty much. The changes are the names and dates. Any questions on that?
I have a couple of general comments. One is that I really love it when there are page numbers on documents, so if you don't have them, that's a really helpful thing to add. I like very much the change the middle school had made to using the term caregiver, and wonder if that's language that could be consistent throughout, or a discussion
Yeah, I
about
had
that.
the same thing. It was on one handbook, but not in the other.
And-
So I didn't know if that was specific to the age group or just why that was.
The other thing, consistency in language. I saw multi-tiered level of support and multi-tiered system of support, and wasn't quite sure what we're calling that now, but I think it's level. And policy citations, just want to make sure, I didn't go back to check and see if they were up to date, if the numbers are current, but I know we've made a lot of changes in the year, and I'm just figuring that you all are checking that. I liked what, Lori, what you did in your report, where you have links in your report that took us to the district website to look at services for students, and just wonder, because there are annual notices that the district is required to post every year, if a link or reference to that link on the district website or the CEC website could be added to each of the handbooks also. And I think that's it.
Is there a reason why we used caregiver in one handbook and parent in the other?
So it's a term that I'm trying to move towards, because there are often parent and guardians and then an other, right? And so when you say caregiver, it encompasses all of those things. And it's a term I came across this summer at a PBIS conference, and I just really
But it
liked
wouldn't be any
it.
different for elementary, high school to use the same.
So that was my thought, that you could have consistent language
Yeah.
across the district.
When I read it, I just thought maybe it had to do with the age group somehow.
And whether that is a term that's officially recognized by people, or, it just seemed like a broader category than even parent/guardian/foster.
And I did get something from the Sunny Day that had caregiver on there as well, so.
Okay, any other questions or comments? An eye towards that type of consistency. citations of policy. Is there a motion?
Sure.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
I'll second. Sorry. Are we approving all of them in one motion?
I would
Yeah, okay.
like to take all three.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? AGR reports.
So we've got 2 AGR reports, the WLC, the chain. Our principals are here if there's questions. This is just another procedural report we have to do for the DPI. It's just pretty standard stuff, nothing out of the ordinary. You've seen this every year.
Anything that anybody would like to bring forward to highlight for us?
Because I got the look, I figured I better. So, when we looked it came from there. When we looked at our academic gap reduction this year, we decided to focus on the iReady scores that we have and that testing that we do 3 times a year. Gave us a nice look at the beginning of where students were at, and we looked at the beginning of the year when they were coming in, we looked at the standard view, and then we looked at the end of the year view, and we decided to make it the end of the year view, because if we started with the beginning of the year view and then at the end looked at end of the year, it was pretty skewed. So when you see the results in column 3, it shows where all of the students at each grade level were at that time of testing based on end of the year expectations. So for instance, in kindergarten we had 10 students who were at or above grade level according to end of the year. And then we had 11 students who were early on grade level and 83 students that were 1 grade level below. And then when it correlates with column 6, where the A goes with group A from column 3. So you can kind of see in that group of students where we were at with that improvement. While we didn't get 100% of the improvement in each area, we're hoping that by the end of the school year, we'll notice a lot more and giving them that year's growth that we were looking for. And that's kind of consistent as you go through all grades K1, 2, and 3. And then sometimes you'll notice that, like for instance, in first grade here, there were 126 kids tested in reading, and then only 124 in math. That kind of, we look at the movement of in and out. We had a few students leaving, and then we had a few others coming in, so the balance when they were being tested at the beginning was a little different. So our numbers might not be at that exact amount, but we'll know more at the end of the year where we stand with those numbers.
Thank you. Questions?
And Chain Elementary, you'll see, has just kindergarten and first this year, so those are the only 2 grade levels listed. I did it the same format that WLC does, so that you'd have the same format to compare to. The only difference is we didn't give the iReady in kindergarten and fall, so you're going to see their baseline scores over there in the end of semester. And just like Jody said, we tried to show you the improvement of each group of students. So even if they already were above, we still expect them to improve. So there's the breakdown right there.
Questions? Anything, realizing that you've given us the hard numbers, anything that is in any way a surprise or concerning to either of you?
It's just the first time we used the end of the year filter at the beginning of the year. So at first you think, oh, what's wrong? But you're looking at what you're expecting of them at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year. So we use you're able to filter the test results by beginning of the year expectations, standard, and end of the year expectations. So we took the beginning of the year scores and filtered them by end of the year view. So they look scary, but that's because you're judging what you want by the end of the year.
And this is the first year
we did that view, yes.
And it looked like 83 kids were 1 year below in kindergarten, but really they were based on the end of the year. So by a whole year's worth of teaching, they should be spot on.
Okay, that's important.
So by setting that filter always to the end of the year when we're looking at this sort of stuff, it's more of an actual comparison. Apples to apples from a 9-month time period. We thought it would be better data.
You said there are 3 settings, beginning, end, and standard.
Standard.
What does
Middle.
standard
Middle.
take a look at? Or picture?
Middle of the year. Growth between the beginning and end.
That part I kind of assumed, but.
You're getting a little punchy now, aren't you, Mark? It's so late here.
Have some pizza.
Should you in the morning with jokes?
I think I'm going to keep moving on. Are there any other questions? Okay.
Do we need to approve those?
No.
No, those are just information.
Informational. Chain Exploration Center.
Rhonda, do you want to talk to
Sure,
these?
the first report is required by the grant cycle, and these are the same performance measures that you can see our results from last year up there where you have that green, that was our goals that we met last year. So now we're on year 2 at the mid-year, and you can see that our expectations are going to go up a little every year. The target is over there on the right, and so it goes up a little every year. So at mid-year on year 2, we have 89.6% have increased their proficiency on their 21st century skills rubric on their projects. So that's a rubric that each is individually assessed on based on their project work, and those 21st century skills are things like communication, collaboration, critical thinking. So we have a good jump on that. The next target is about the iReady scores. And as you know, we need to perform at least as well as the other schools in the district. And at mid-year, we're on track for that with 73% scoring at or above in reading and 60% at or above in math. The next one is the achievement gap. So when they say educationally disadvantaged, they're lumping together economically disadvantaged, ELL, students with disability. So those subgroups, we need to show that the ones in those subgroups have met their growth targets. So, and they have farther to grow than some of the other students. So based on that, we have 70% of the economically disadvantaged on track to meet their growth target, 44% of the, it's hard to read this far, 44% then on the,
Look behind you.
oh yeah, that would work. 70% economically disadvantaged on track and in reading, and 44% in math, and 88% of students with disabilities on reading and 50% in math. So that's really good as well. And the final one is the community service hours. And this year we're expecting 80% of student portfolios to show this growth, and there's different hours required at each grade level. And right now 63% are on target to meet their required grade levels, number of hours in community service.
Is the charter school the only group that works with community hours?
I'm sure all the schools do, they just don't formally have to keep track of it like this. This is
Are you
part of it.
required to do that based upon?
But, well, we made that goal for ourselves. That's
Okay.
part of our
So it's your
our
own
mission.
goal? It isn't,
Correct.
it isn't tied into any of the grants or any of that sort of thing?
Correct.
It is tied into the contract.
Yeah, well, it's because
Not
it's,
the measurements.
right, the contract, that's not part of the grant. Right. So you'll see the year-end results at the end of the year. The next one is the family handbook, and I put the changes in red. There's just some few changes based on how the schedule is going to look this year with agricultural and environmental, and just some wording changes. So if you have any questions on that, I can answer those.
You're not supposed, Mark, can you scroll up to those changes we were just talking about? Those are red right there. Okay.
Pretty minor stuff.
Yeah.
Took out Chain Elementary School.
Just a shout out to the science fair, by the way. I thought everybody else would have said something, but since it was there, it was great.
I couldn't remember if it happened before our February meeting.
Yes.
We're since-
Yeah, it was a great and wonderful time.
Couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
it was.
Okay.
Thank you for.
Finally, the class size.
Yes, so this was a proposal that came to our governance council at our last month governance meeting, and after it was a split vote, but it did pass that we would accept 20 students instead of 18 at the grade levels 4 and up to be more closely mirroring the class sizes in the rest of the district. So now it's coming to you because that would be a contract amendment, because our contract right now says 18 per grade level.
So we make a motion, are we accepting this number, but also is that including the handbook and the performance measure review? No, just this, just the number. Okay, I'll make a motion then that we accept the student-teacher ratio to 20 to 1.
Okay, motion, is there a second? Motion and second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I just have one comment about, and I know I've mentioned it probably to Megan, maybe to you as well. Now that we have several amendments, we need to find a way to get those into the contract, our contract document. And I do have something from Kaleidoscope Academy that has a real good solution for making it very evident and keeping track of things over the years. So it's on my to-do list to share that with people so that we can do that.
Opposed? Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Didn't want to cut you off.
Discussion after I voted.
Okay, focus areas for the future.
Well, on Friday, we covered the first 3 of these. The last one, school perception survey, Mark put together a summary of these perceptions. I don't know if we had to go through. You guys don't want me to go through everything that we talked about on Friday, do you?
No.
That was pretty fast.
Do you guys want time to think about it? You just want me to jump right to the
Yeah, why
survey
don't you
now?
please, Mark? Thank you.
So, who is ready to play survey sets regarding the 2019-2020 school district Waupaca survey results? I'm just kidding, we're not going to play that game yet. Survey overview with you. Remember, there were 3 separate surveys, one to parents, one to students, one to staff, that were sent out month of November, essentially. We use School Perceptions, which is a national, independent, unbiased research firm that has conducted over 10,000 educational surveys, located in Slinger, Wisconsin, I believe. Survey participation, 19% of our parents responded, 74% of our staff, and 77% of our students. Knowing we have a mathematician on the board, they're going to say, well, is that statistically valid in terms of results?
Yes.
So, in terms of
You can
verbiage
expect
from the
around
consultant,
70%.
we found that parent survey typically gets between 12 to 20. You fell in that 19% range. For staff, expect response rate between 60 and 80, you get 74%. Your response rates are right on track, and your parent data is fairly evenly dispersed among grade levels. Confident making decisions, changes using your survey results. Okay, this is nice to hear from, again, outside entity. It's got nothing to gain or lose by utilizing this information. So we've spent some time reviewing this as an admin team. So every building administrator team had access to their individual reports as well as the district reports. I created a highlights packet and we shared out with our administrators. We spent some time discussing this at a principal meeting and at a core team meetings to ensure that all district level administrators were well aware of everything that resulted in the surveys. I'm only getting these snapshots of the surveys because every survey was quite lengthy in some regards. So, for example, the parent survey, 9 categories of questions. They had 18 questions related to the district, 23 ranking type questions, and 28 individual school questions. So, the parent could have filled out several questions depending on how many students they had in the district. One of the highlights is that 93% of our parents prefer communications from emails from their teachers or administrators versus hearing about it from a board meeting. So, no offense. But
No offense taken.
it is what it is. How are we doing? So, this was just one of those snapshots of data points here. And the way this feedback came in, and I'll explain this in a minute, it's a 4-point scale. And so the percentage of folks who responded in terms of strongly agree or agree is listed here, and their average number of points that they gave us out of that 4-point scale is listed here. Okay. By the way, in the board docs, if you click on parent survey, it'll take you to the actual parent survey results PDF that was provided.
We knew you'd like that. Was all of the data collected via online material? Was there were no hard copies or paper?
No.
Surveys.
So this next one is part of the gap analysis data that they gave us. So again, when I was talking about rankings earlier in one of the earlier slides, they ranked out 28 categories in terms of their importance of them. And then they also gave us a scale or a ranking on how are we doing with regards to that, and then they correlated them to give you a gap. So a negative gap is not good. So according to importance of a 3.45 out of a 4-point scale, the importance of programming for struggling students who are at risk of not graduating, of those parents who responded, they gave us a 2.62 average score for a difference of 0.83. So Betty, I much appreciate your comments earlier about your visits and knowing the work that happens out of it. And you can kind of see preparing students for college and career, critical thinking, personal finance, preparing students for life after high school. And so when we talked about this administratively, one of the things that we talked about is really how have we defined, preparing students for college and career, critical thinking, problem solving, preparing students for life after high school. How have we defined that? How have we communicated that? How have we articulated that with our students and our parents? And I think we've got a lot of room for improvement there. Because what you may think of as critical thinking skills or life after high school, preparing for college and career, may be very different than what we're actually trying to do. So until we're able to articulate that and communicate that, I think these scores are always going to struggle, particularly in those areas. And yeah, I'm picking the areas we scored the worst on in terms of the biggest gaps. So we want to improve in those areas. So I think as we continue to look at, Mr. Sari's, 100-day plan and the aftermath of those things, and kind of we talked about this the other day, we need to really look at what are those measures in which we're going to hang our hat on, and then how are we going to communicate that out. And this will be a reoccurring theme, I believe, throughout this.
Well, some of these topics that are just listed there, I'm looking at the one that, one of the ones that about personal finance. I mean, we've talked about this as teachers. Years ago, we were criticized because students come out and they don't know how to even balance a checkbook. Well, nobody uses checkbooks anymore. I mean, some of this is moving faster than we can even keep up with. Steve, I don't usually, so do I. But I mean, some of that is the perception based upon how quickly we have the information to get what parents and students think is important to them.
Yeah, and this is one data point, right? I mean, we want to look for trends. And so as we continue to give this survey, maybe on a yearly or every other year basis, we want to see trends and improvements, right, with those areas. And so I think that's really important to keep in mind, too. The other part of it, from a staffing standpoint, it should really be about growth mindset. We can control some of these things, and how are we going to control some of these things? Yeah. So we should, again, see those trends. Here's a celebration.
I also find it interesting with those gaps, 2 slides later, 88% are either satisfied or very satisfied.
Yeah. And again, I'm just giving you the highlights. So there are so many slides and nuggets of information, and that's why we spent probably a total of 3 to 4 hours as an admin team between a couple of different events going through the data and digging. And that doesn't include the time that the principals have spent with their staff on it too.
So Mark, I believe that there'll always be a negative in this area, in these types of questions, because my profession, my generation is going to see it differently than the other generation. As we talked about that in my statistics class a lot. There's always going to be that negative perception because you're never going to be at the same generation.
Yeah, and again, though, on a positive side, I would say we need to do a better job of communicating what we're about to make sure that we can maybe close that gap. Eliminate the gap, probably not a reality, but close the gap.
And so given that there's more data behind all of this, do you feel you have a pretty good sense of why people might be saying some of these or having some of these responses?
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, and maybe the principals care to add something or not, but I think I don't think the surveys told us anything we probably didn't already have a strong inkling of. I think our admin team does a really good job of knowing what's working and what isn't working. And so this just probably more reiterated those gut feelings or what we believe. And again, as you heard me say, we need to get better at aligning our data and communicating why we're doing what we're doing, throwing in some of those evaluatory measures, and communicate. You know, that transparency part. And I think there's no one magic change that's going to positively impact everything. We know that. But are there a couple of things that we hope to have greater, more positive impact as we continue to look at this information? I think so. Absolutely. I mean, to me, like, this is a big part of it. As much as say different things, 86% of the parents who took the survey, and this was odd, so I went back and double checked all the numbers, they would recommend their child's school to a friend. And I'm not talking just one school, I'm talking all of our buildings. So that to me is kind of an ultimate measure if you recommend it to your friend. Because, I mean, after all, our kids are our most important resource. So overall, how satisfied are you? Mr. Johnson gave this one away, but you can see he had those two up at 88%. And the 2% don't know, so let's say 90% of our folks are, pretty happy with it.
Like how you fudge numbers, that's good.
It's data, Level of agreement for each district forms, and this was some positive stuff and some not so positive stuff from perspectives. So, yeah, you can see strongly agree the average and the percentile then, according to other districts of similar nature as deemed by school perceptions. How did we score compared to them? So that's where you get a percentile.
So what's in the parentheses there?
This is the number of respondents.
Oh.
This would be our N. And so, again, there was nothing that said you couldn't move on to the next question unless you answered this question.
Okay.
So that's why that number varies. Then we moved on to the student survey results overview. 3 categories, but now we get into something called index scores, where they take the combination of questions, so the students had 68 questions to answer, they can refilter them into these 7 index scores based on some overlap of information. One of the things we talked about with principals was this is student self-reporting on me. So when Lori talked about health and wellness, there's a correlation there. And probably we need to continue to have that focus, because we need to make sure that students have empathy. We need to make sure students can be themselves at school. We need to make sure students are proud. We need to make sure that students have good relationships. Now, this looks terrible, 19, but statistically, again, when you're talking about a district average of 3.11, comparable schools, 3.29, and then your percentile is 19. So you can see if this number increases just slightly, you'd be at close to that 50th percentile. So I don't want to say, whoa, it is not looking the best on certain things. But again, opportunities to improve. You heard about the dot drill and the focus on that from the middle school perspective, for example. I have certainly been preaching relationships for going on several years with that. So we know we need to continue to work on that.
Abby, did you take this survey?
Yeah, I did. In I don't know, last semester sometime.
So did you find the questions interesting, difficult, easy,
I thought they were kind of weird. I was like, of course I help people. Seeing that result, I'm like, oh my gosh. That's actually quite a number of people who said they wouldn't help someone. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, we were surprised. I mean, kind of what I termed kind of a lack of empathy with some of our students and perseverance on some of those things. And so just something to think about. The other thing I would challenge is, we have the Waupaca way, and how do we explicitly teach those things? Long-term planning with the multi-year teaching learning plan is being more explicit with those behavioral skills too. Make sure students know the supports.
I think that part of that might be people were didn't really get why we're taking it, so they might not have taken it seriously. Because my experiences in school, it doesn't reflect those numbers. Everyone's very helpful and everyone cares about everyone.
Yeah.
So maybe they just didn't care about the survey, so they didn't take it seriously.
And that's another point that in the future we'd like to increase the response rates, and one way we do this is making sure we're sharing out that information and we're utilizing the information. If you're going to ask me to take a survey and I never hear anything back about it, or it's not used anyway, then what's the point? So if we're going to continue to try to do this, we need to make sure we're utilizing this data, so sharing it out. So here's just some other ways to look at it from student perspective around my school. and my learning. And then the last part of it was, well, I'm sorry, there's a couple more slides with students. I found this one to be pretty interesting. You know what I want to do? 75% of our kids are leaving us. That's pretty good in today's day and age. Staff survey, there's 20 categories. Quite a few more questions that they had. And so here are some of the highlights from that. Change readiness. I felt like this one was positive in any which way you wanted to look at the data. I don't think this last one is any surprise again. I think evaluations of initiatives has always been something that's been lacking in education. So we know that we need to get better with that.
Seems like every year it changes.
Well, that's the consistent deal, that it changes years. Click your dynamic there. Engagement, I mean, you know, my work contributes to the success of the district. 99% either agree or strongly agree with that. That's great from a culture standpoint. Proud of our district, 95%. Job personally satisfying. Take me a lot to leave the district, 78%. Strongly agree. These are positive marks, right? Talk about culture, operating as a team, bring about change, help me when I have a heavy workload. A little bit about collaboration here. I think this bodes well to our early release Wednesday, at least from a staff perspective, these opportunities. I think if they weren't appreciative of that or they didn't see value in that, these numbers would be very different. A little bit about their work environment. Not sure that, you know, this one is a surprise. We hope, you know, time is always the enemy of hard work and perfectionism. You know, I didn't want to be all positive with things, of course, or I just want to be really honest about parts of it. And again, you have access to this. This was the one compensation and benefits area that I felt like had the most room for growth potentially. And maybe part of this too, as we've talked administratively, is just how familiar are our staff with the benefits that are available to them? And how can we improve that? That doesn't cost anything. We're not changing benefits, we're not changing structures. Just making sure we know of the benefits that exist for our staff.
I found this one interesting. When I looked at it, I expected teachers to say, as we have for centuries, that we're underpaid, and we're underpaid. But I found it interesting, my pay is fair in relation to my job responsibility is even lower, because I think that in the modern world, and Dale would probably agree with me, I'm glad I'm not teaching as much, because there's so much more thrown out there now than there was, added on. I'm not just saying by us here in our district, don't get me wrong. No. But all the things, just like Betty was talking about, you know, going to these seminars dealing with safety and concerns and threats, all that stuff. You know, for the most part in our careers, those didn't exist. Everybody now has to deal with all of those as well. So it's no wonder that they think they'll get paid more, because they're accepting more responsibility.
This is information to track and see how we're doing. Absolutely. Overall satisfaction, you know, I think this is an important measure for us to keep in mind too.
What was the last one there that was cut off a little bit?
I believe it's 72%.
With the financial something.
Financial management?
Yeah, something along those lines. Cut off. So then they talk about the 12 indices, so they do kind of the same thing. And they break down those 141 questions into correlative areas here. And so this is kind of a, how well did, if you're going to say score our district to the comparable districts, and kind of what percentile are we at? So in terms of trust and in building leadership, our average score is at 4.11. In the comparison school, you're at a 3.75 as an average. So that puts us on the 89th percentile regarding trust and building leadership. You look at workload, you know, we had a 3.67 average score, which puts us in the 74th percentile.
One thing I do want to say, back to the pay one, is that I talked to a few of the new teachers, this is total anecdotal data, but that the point was that, why did you come here? It's because we still cherish getting an education in our pay scale, that if teachers go get a master's, they're going to keep moving along the pay scale. Where in a lot of other districts, you're not recognized for that. I think we're only I think our salary schedule is still the only one about in the state that's like that.
One of few. Anyway.
One of few, yeah. And so that is a plus, and I think maybe if that question was reworded a little differently, that you would have seen a higher percentage.
And again, I think I go back to benefits, because there's some veteran staff that I work with that forget about the benefit of credit reimbursement.
Yeah.
And you think about what we do in the summer with the Waupaca First Institute and Tech Camp, those don't come without cost. And those, you know, if you're taking it for graduate credits, it's at a reduced cost even beyond that if you were to just go there individually. So.
And for our staff that are just starting to get a family, you can get those raises quicker in the middle, and that's where it counts.
Every 6 credits.
That's right, and that's what counts right now for those people that are doing the families. That's right.
And it helps them sharpen their saw. I think a lot of this for us is making sure that we're staying current with what's working and what's going on too. And I think those credits are a reminder that we always are continually growing and need to continue to learn. Make sure that those classes are aligned to our craft so we can improve. I mean, getting the pay raise is nice too, but if we can get better results out of our students because we're craftier with our craft, I think that's even better too. So I know I went through 3 surveys very quickly with you. That's why they're all linked in here. Kind of our big takeaways: communication, communication, communication. Right? We can never do a good enough job of communicating, and we need to recognize that we need to get better with that. So just some of the things we've talked about more recently is those grade level portraits. Celebrate, communicate, identify what those look like to hopefully help people understand where the direction we're heading and why we're allocating resources as we are. All the opportunities of a comprehensive district that we have, especially here at the high school, I'm not sure everybody understands all those opportunities. So how do we, again, communicate those opportunities and celebrate those successes? Transparency and resource allocation and that program evaluation mentality. Feedback, you know, sharing with our staff, our students, our parents that we do value the feedback and that it's good or bad feedback is a gift. So we need to hear that. So we need to set up so that people are as comfortable as necessary to give us feedback both ways. I think that's really important.
I'm going to give you some feedback right now. Thank you for being here today, administration, for 12 hours. That's how long you've been here, 7:30 to 7:30 right now. You've been here 12 hours.
Some of us have been here longer than that.
That's right. Well, I'm serious though. These guys are sitting here like they're tired because they are. They've been here all day. So.
We heard about wellness, staff and students. You know, folks have relationships. Everyone belongs. Explicit teaching of healthy habits, especially our mental health, and clarity on expectations and responsibilities. If we're not clear on those, that's going to hurt our culture. Survey says, question?
Are you planning to give the same questions the next time around for comparison purposes?
I think we would be careful not to get too far away from the same questions so we can continue to compare.
Would you ever share this with your faculty?
Sure. Actually, it's on the March 3rd principal, now the cat's out of the bag. It's on the March 3rd principal agenda. And then I'll be asking the principals how have they or how will they be utilizing this information.
Because it might be interesting for them to see how others filled it out.
And their presentations would look probably different because they could use their own building level feedback versus district level feedback.
And as far as, you know, like the benefit thing, when you said, you know, they might not think about it. Sometimes when you're in a group and you're sharing results like this, it's your peers that would say, well, what about this or what about that?
Yep.
I mean, the information comes from their colleagues rather than from above. And, oh, yeah, I never thought of that. Maybe they filled it out after 12 hours.
Thank you for links to the data. And Abby, did you have a chance to look at this, or do you have?
Look at the summaries?
To look at the summaries?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay. Then I won't quiz you.
She agrees with all of it, though.
Every single one? Perfect.
Long day for you too, right, Abby?
Any other questions? That we will move on to proposed contract with Neola.
So at the WASB conference or convention, we had a presentation with Steve LaValle, our representative from Neola. I think the consensus that I heard was to get a contract, and so we move forward with that contract and have it here for you to hopefully approve.
When would it take effect?
Well, if you guys start, I mean, if you guys approve it, we could start working on it probably within a month and start going through the process of all this work.
So what budget, what's going to, how will we
Well,
pay for it?
we talked with Carl, and it's gonna be spread out. Carl, did you get a chance to look at that document with the payments?
It's spread out, it's $4,150 annually, like a five-year contract. So,
Over a series of, I don't know, 30 months or something like that. So it's gonna bridge our two budgets, which is really gonna help us.
And so for this year's payment, what budget would it come out of? Do you have that?
Carl, what did we decide with that? I know that we had talked about it and were able to make it work.
yeah, we can make it work in this fiscal year or next fiscal year, wherever you want to start it. And I'm guessing with the WASB contract is running out, and I'm guessing they will let us come in early to start getting us up to date as well.
Pretty confident we're gonna have some leftover funds that's gonna be able to cover this.
And it looks like, because once the contract is signed, that first payment is due.
That could be, yeah, I think you're right. The first one, yeah.
I thought it was like $13,000 or something. It's-
$4,150 or something?
Yeah.
That was for the half a year or something? I thought I remember reading something.
It's like 24,000
Total.
total, spread out over 30-some months.
But the first, and then, so there's a 4,150, and then 6 months later, an equal. So we'll be in the next fiscal year by that.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the contract with Neola for policy services, with a caveat that at our next regular scheduled board meeting, we get a chance to see what the costs were and have that all nailed down at that point in time, so we know.
At page 28 of 35 in the attachment.
I know, but I mean, in terms of whether it's be part of this year's budget or next year's.
What's gonna be
budget.
part of both?
You're gonna do it both?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yes,
that
Carl
initial
should
payment
continue.
will come out of this year's budget.
Okay. Okay.
Payments in 6 months, 12 months.
I just remember sitting down for it.
28.
And he said something like 13,000.
Two different things.
That was like, maybe that was the first half because it was for a full year.
27 and 28
This
are two
is,
different
we're not
things.
starting at the full year.
You're not talking the same.
$24,900, 6 installments. And then the schedule is outlined right there, Steve.
So it's going to be every 6 months. And it's pretty low.
Yeah, this is on page 27. Then 28 is something else.
Okay, it's 28 on the electronic copy. I'm not sure what the paper copy is, but
Oh, I see.
option 2, that's initial.
Right.
Did you have a second? If not,
Okay, so let me rephrase then, based upon now that I know what the financial
That
and when it's
12,200,
paid.
which is due and payable within 30 days.
This is not the option we were
Oh, I see. Okay, that's where I remember you
Yeah.
telling us down at that
Okay.
meeting.
Okay.
One is bylaws and policies, and the one that we're going for is bylaws, policies, and administrative guidelines development. So it includes 3 things. The cheaper price didn't include the administrative guidelines development.
Which is our huge.
Yeah.
So we are going with the option 2 in terms of payment, is that correct?
That's what Carl and I would prefer.
Okay, okay, so I'll make a motion then, I'll revise my motion to approve the contract with Neola Policy Services as presented, and payment will be according to option 2 of the contract.
Second. Motion and second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 7, Gaggle Speak Up Safety Tip Line.
I'm going to be as succinct as I can. This came out of the Community School Safety Committee wanting to know what we can do to allow anonymous or non-anonymous, if they don't want to be anonymous, tips to come in. There is a free one through our insurance vendor, but as we analyze that one compared to the Gaggle, which we already have Gaggle, that students can, or that screens emails and communications, it's like $1 a student, so for the investment, we felt it was very well worth it because this version, compared to the free version, gives us immediate contact if it's like after school hours or on weekends. So if a student said that they were going to be committing suicide or were thinking of something like that, and it was at 12 o'clock midnight on a Saturday night, we have a chain of command of who would get notified so that there would be action taken. And we think that that is worth it. So we just want to make you aware as a board that this is the direction we're headed. We're going to be investing in them. And it's just another one of those things from the Community School Safety Committee recommendations that we're following through on.
Okay, so that is information only?
Yes.
It does not require any specific action. That moves us on to the consent agenda.
I would move approval of the consent agenda.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Pat Fair.
Aye.
Steve Hackett.
Aye.
Sandy Robinson.
Yes.
Betty Mannion.
Yes.
Dale Belt.
Yes.
Steve Johnson.
Yes. And with that, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everyone.
24 minutes, huh?